Welcome to Beyond the Balance, where we redefine wealth and rebuild futures. Because financial freedom isn't just about numbers, it's about making your money work for you, your future, and your freedom. We're here to talk about wealth, growth, and the stories that prove you don't need a perfect balance to make a perfect comeback. Welcome to Beyond the Balance. Today we're diving into tax strategy, wealth building, and financial empowerment with Lorra Brown, founder of LBE Consulting. With over 22 years of experience, a master's in taxation, and a passion for making money and taxes approachable, Lorra helps entrepreneurs, especially women, build lasting wealth. If you're ready to shift your mindset and keep more of what you earn, this episode is for you. Lorra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor.
I am so happy to have you here. And before we dive into any type of conversation, I'd really just love to know more about your journey.
So my journey started out, I've always loved accounting, and I started out doing accounting in high school and then went on to college. I never knew that I was going to love tax and the financial literacy side as much as I have. So that is what has brought me along this journey today of different things that has happened into my life.
Well, so may I ask you then, how did you fall into tax? Was it simply just because you learned it during your courses, or did something or someone kind of guide you in that direction?
Neither one of those. So actually, what made me pursue more in taxes is my family ended up having some serious tax issues after a tax preparer filed a fraudulent return on their behalf. And I remember going to the IRS office with my dad, and the gentleman was asking questions about my son because at that time I was a teenage mother. But it was just how condescending and cold he was. And my mind went to say, you know what? No one else in my family will ever have these type of issues again.
Wow. Wow. When people think about like tax, the IRS and anything that has to do with tax in general, I think a lot of us are extremely scared. And I can't imagine as a mother how, scary and infuriating that must have been for you.
Yes, it was. And so that experience just planted that seed, and it continued to grow. Again, at that time, I fully didn't realize, but it opened my eyes to how important it truly is to understand taxes, and not just during tax season, but all year round.
Especially for those who are entrepreneurs and trying to start businesses, right? I don't think anybody really knows what really goes into taxing, like for businesses and stuff, unless you really get there.
I truly agree. There are so many things that when people start a business, they have no idea of, what all taxes there can be. Most of the people just think, okay, I'm just going to file a tax return at the end of the year, or they don't set aside a certain amount of revenue. And when they don't do this, it leads to penalties. So as I'm working with new clients, I always tell them, look, there's a certain percentage of income that we need to set aside. Now, because you're self-employed, you are responsible for all of those taxes. If you hire your spouse, there are some other alternatives and some tax saving measures that you can use instead of paying payroll. So that's one of the things. There are work opportunity credits. They will train employees and your employees and help improve their skills. And then part of the work opportunity credit is if you're looking to hire employees, you can hire veterans or those that have, just been released from being incarcerated. There are credits for those that are receiving right off the health insurance premiums. Or you can have a solo 401k if you're self-employed or a small business owner with no employees.
Wow, okay.
I tell people, choose the right advisor and then
Fair.
establish clear goals. So you want to have someone that, keeps up with tax laws, but also knows accounting, or either you want someone that can do the tax or someone that can do the accounting. You should be doing a thorough interview, asking them questions. Have they dealt with companies like yours? Let's just say you're retail. Have they dealt with retail companies? What sizes? All of those type of things. What has been their success? What has been their proudest moments of, working with a client? What have they done with the client? Do you mesh with that person? Not them just filling out returns or just doing books and that's it. And you're not
That is,
educated.
yeah, that's, I mean, I'm nodding my head here.
I tell a lot of people nowadays, a lot of us do multiple things. It doesn't mean that we can't handle those things. And then there are some people that they just only want to focus on the books, or they just want to only focus on the tax. But then there are some that we come from public accounting, so we're well rounded. So in public accounting, they're going to make sure that you know the books, that you're going to touch the tax returns. And then some of us in the newer days, we were called business consultants, but now we're actually fractional CFOs that go out to companies and we help them. So like in
Oh,
my
wow.
part, when I was in public accounting, I did all of those pieces, but I graduated to be a business consultant slash CFO, fractional CFO. And so there was such a thing that I would bust the company down and turn it all around. They're called
Wow.
turnarounds. So we start back from scratch, making sure that we have the right people in place, all of those things.
Wow, okay. And as I'm listening to you, I can really, I mean, your experience is really exuding in what you're saying. And I'm just really curious to know about like what keeps you passionate about this work. Like I noticed that you're continuously studying this field. And why do you continue to do that?
What makes me passionate about this work that I do is knowing that I have the ability to help others, to give them a great experience, but then also prepare them for so many things throughout this journey that I call. So the complex of the regulations, but then also looking at the same times, there's things that they don't understand. There are things that, they want for their family. So being able to help them when they're feeling overwhelmed, and to really just help them understand. Because my number one thing that I learned from public accounting is, what's your why? A lot of people want this business to succeed because this is how they're going to take care of their family. They want to leave a legacy. They want to, at a point as they've been in business, now they want to do succession planning.
Succession planning. How would you probably, how do I say this? How would somebody make a successful succession plan? Them.
So, first of all, I always, on the ones that I've worked on, we have had to identify the person that you want to, be your successor. And sometimes, I'm sorry, it's not always your family. I've had people that have had someone that, has worked from the bottom up, and that is a person that shares their values and vision, and can also look outside of how to expand. So those are all the things that I think helps make a succession plan even much more valuable, because then you know that you are leaving, your business in good hands. And still, even if you have children, they can still play a part of the succession plan, because that can be the board, and then they still have a vote or a say so if they're not ready. But then there's been times where I've worked with construction owners who do have children, and we have to position them, we have to help them to see the bigger picture, to get their mind where they can lead a company.
Okay, and that brings me to my next question for you. Speaking of mindsets, I've learned that you emphasize shifting mindsets around financial freedom. So, may I ask, what are the biggest mindset barriers that are holding people back from wealth building?
Fear of failure or success, because a
Okay.
lot of people are like, I just don't want to fail. But then a lot of people are scared to succeed because now they're like, how does that look? What do I do? But then lack of financial literacy and a belief that wealth to them is very unattainable.
Ah, that's fair. And so, how would, like, if for a person who might be fearful of that starting out, how would you kind of let them see that that wealth that they're looking for is attainable?
To let them know that we can all attain the same thing. It's just about the work that you put in. But then, even so, shifting your mindset. Because the first thing I do is try to think of, well, not think about, but reach out and say, what type of relationship did you have with money when you were growing up? Because a lot of parents don't speak about money. And then if you come from, areas where you are impoverished, your mindset about money is totally different. So once we frame the mindset and we understand what your relationship is with money, then we can move forward to let you know that you can attain that wealth, and here is a plan. The plan doesn't mean it's just like a diet that my trainer tells me. You
Ah,
just because you messed up on the diet or the exercise does not mean that you have to quit. We just pick up and we just keep going because it's ultimately a plan. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get there. It just determines how much work you put in, how sooner or later you get to your goal.
that makes perfect sense. And when you talked about the diet, it really fit. Like, I remember there was a trainer on the internet who said, it's okay to slip, but, don't slide. You don't have to give up because you made one mistake. And I think as somebody who is learning, to build a business and somebody who often feels overwhelmed by, taxes and, business planning and stuff like that, it is very easy to just be like, oh, I'm scared. I think I'm done. I'm going to quit now.
Right, right. It happens.
And so I know that one of the focuses that you have is helping women entrepreneurs specifically. And I'd like to know, how do you help them to feel more confident in their financial planning and tax strategy?
So the first thing, I'm always going to focus on the financial literacy side because that's a powerful tool, especially for female entrepreneurs. So this will enable them to take control of their business. And so when the financial literacy comes in part, here is the first thing we're going to do. We're going to learn to read financials, learn what your margins are, track your progress. Do you have emergency funding? So all of these things come in, and that is part of the financial literacy piece that goes for businesses. What is your financial spending habits? Because one thing that I notice and that has gone on with women is if we have bad spending habits, we bring that over into our business. So
Yes.
sometimes
Yeah.
we can act like the business is our bank, and that's not your bank.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard that a lot. Your business is not your bank. And why do people kind of fall into that kind of, how may I say this? How do people fall into that kind of belief that whatever money that their business is making, that they can kind of use it for whatever it is that they want?
The biggest thing is not separating it. So I have a lot of people when I first have them, I'll say, okay, your business bank account, what business bank account? So they're just funneling all of their money into their personal account. The next thing
Ah,
that I find, especially as women, how they think is because they're just like, well, I don't have money over here in my personal account. So I feel like whatever it is, I can just pull it out of my business account. But then I let them know what you should do is track the amount of money you're making. If it's not consistent, then what we can do is always look at what can you pay yourself, just like a job would. And so this
right.
is how you need to manage your money. So let's just say you are making six or $700,000 a year, then there needs to be a reasonable salary that we could say that you could take. Let's just say that salary is about 180. And so then every 2 weeks, we're going to take it just like you get paid at a job. And this is what you have. This
Right.
is what you have to live off of. And I tell them, make that work.
Of course. So that's when you kind of take your basic financial knowledge and, implement living within your means and play like having a specific, this is what my bills are, this are what my wants are
Yes.
and stuff like that. Okay, that makes that makes plenty of sense. So then I guess I want to ask you personally, what's one financial belief you used to have that you've completely changed your mind about now as an expert?
The one that I would say is I used to think it was important to confirm or to conform to what other people thought about me. So I realized, okay, no one has to see me drive my BMW every day to think that I have money. No one has to see that I live in a luxurious $2 million house to say that I have money. So these are the things that we conform to today's society. If I carry a Birkin, I've made it.
Right.
Those type of things. But that is what I realized that, I don't care what other people think about me on that side, long as I know that my financial house is in order.
Right. That makes yes. I love that because I think especially since we are so driven by social media and influencers, I think that's where we tend to get a lot of our financial knowledge from, and it's really wrong.
Right.
Actually, that's thank you.
Completely agree.
Okay, that I'm so then I want to ask you, for entrepreneurs looking to build long-term wealth, where should they actually start?
First of all, I think they need to start to outline the key principles of building wealth. What does that look like for them? Including
Okay.
setting goals, managing their debt, saving, investing, again, understanding taxes, and building a strong personal and business credit. These are the things that I think that will help you to build long-term wealth, and this is where you can start it. For example, I can always only tell people about me and my personal experiences. Once I, set those goals of what I wanted, made sure I managed my debt, saved, invested. I started investing when I had a job, participating in 401k. I used to work for an employer that had stock purchase. Oh, and I really took advantage of that. So, building a strong business credit and personal credit. So once I had that down, then when I wanted to think about, leaving even more of a legacy to my children and my grandchildren, I
Of
started
course.
thinking about what other businesses besides this one could I create that, does not really take me to be involved every day to run that business.
So you said always make a plan, but how do you make a successful plan?
Ignore the noise, first of all, because we got a lot of noise. So you have to do what is right for you. And in order to do that plan, you're going to need to save and you're going to need to invest. And I say, when you're doing that, start as early as possible, then there's so many other things that will work out for you later on down the road. So you've got to know, do some research. What is it that you want to save for? What is it that you want to invest in? Always the research.
Okay.
These days, we have the internet. And so the internet has so much out there. Yes, that's your starting point because you're doing your homework. But then your next starting point is you're going to, speak to a financial advisor, a financial planner, those type of things. You're going to want to speak to a couple of different people so that you can get a grasp on what they're telling you, but then they should also lead you to resources that you can see. And then on those resources, I'll tell you, for financial planners, I'm not a financial planner, but I do volunteer and I'm part of the Financial Planning Association. They do have people that volunteer and they're able to ask questions. So if they provide you information, you are able to look at it on the website and then still follow up. They have people out there that are glad to answer questions. And
Wow,
then there's
okay.
volunteer days, like, if you can't pay or somebody says we charge this for our consultation, they have volunteer days where people like us will go out for different organizations that we feel passionate about and volunteer our time.
And so, where can people find those resources specifically?
So if you are looking for financial planning, you can go to the Financial Planning Association and they will have a list of financial planners. You can also check your local bank. If you bank with Chase, they will have people there. If you're a military family, like I was, USAA, they have people there. So those are, different places that you can find people that can help you and assist you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Perfect. And then this would be my last question and my most important question, I think, because I'm very interested. How can people find you and also try to connect with you more and learn from you?
They can always find me on Facebook at LBE Consulting, and then you can find me on Instagram, the Tax CEO, and it's the same on TikTok, the Tax CEO. And then lastly, you can always reach out to me through my website, which is www.lbeconsulting.com.
Okay. I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I think I learned so much from you, and I've written stuff down that I'm really ready to research. And so, thank you. I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Beyond the Balance. If this conversation inspired you, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Keep redefining wealth, rebuilding your future, and taking control of your financial journey. And always remember, you don't need a perfect balance to make a perfect comeback.